Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pixelists, the podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. I'm Will, that's Blake, and today we're here to talk about Worlds Beyond Number. But
Yes.
before we dive into that, we know we might have some new people checking out the channel, so I'm going to toss it over to my illustrious co-host to tell you a little bit more about us.
Yeah, well, we just thought, we have a lot of like people who check out our channel for like D&D type content, but not necessarily maybe you're here for the first time checking out, you listened to episode 1 of Worlds Beyond Number and you're like, I want to talk about this. So you found our channel. So very, very quickly, we just thought we'd be like, hey, this is who we are. We're a couple of nerds who like talking nerd stuff. That's pretty much it. Will and I have been friends since we were kids, and we've loved all sorts of nerd stuff. And we haven't always, as is the case in nerd, in nerd life, is we don't always have a number of people to talk about it with. And so Will and I guess it was over a year ago, we were like, hey, what if we did like a YouTube style podcast? So anyway, this is where we just pretty much just talk about what we love. And it's a lot of D&D. It's a lot of, not lately, but typically in the past, it's been a lot of Marvel, Critical Role, which if you don't know what that is, it's another D&D show on Twitch. And we just experienced the first episode of Worlds Beyond Number. And so we plan to be here bi-weekly talking about the latest episode as it continues to drop, and hope that you guys would join us on this journey of exploring the world that Brennan Lee Mulligan has created. So
yeah, I know we're both really excited to be diving into this new adventure. And like Blake said, we would love to have you along for the journey with us each week, speculating, theory crafting, all that good stuff. But for any of our, anybody that's familiar with us, but is like, what's Worlds Beyond Number? Really quickly, especially if you're familiar with us, you probably know what Critical Role is. So if you do, this is kind of the same thing, and this is, I guess, something we might get into when we start actually discussing the episode. It is different in ways, but it's a D&D podcast at the heart of it. Audio only, though.
For now,
because we don't. Correct.
Yeah, because this is the other thing that's a little nuanced is they've been a bit vague. They envision doing a lot of different things with this audio only experience. Currently, it's D&D. So,
right. And yeah, so it's, I guess, I'm trying to decide where I should punch into this, but this venture, if you will, is being led by Brennan Lee Mulligan, Erika, Ishii, Aabria Iyengar, and Lou Wilson. Some of those names you might be familiar with, especially if you do come over from Critical Role. All of them have been on Critical Role in some form or fashion in the past. They have banded together. They are Dimension 20, also alumni, if you will.
Yeah.
And they
which some of our people only watch Dimension 20 and don't even watch Critical Role. Right. So anyway, but yeah, continue.
So they banded together, launched this new venture called Worlds Beyond Number, and they said it's going to be this is a long-term thing. We're talking I listened to, I think it was the Fireside Chat, which we can maybe talk about that later. But they were like, we're going to be we're doing this for the rest of our lives. So let's figure out what we're doing here. So this is a long-term thing. But of course it is starting with this D&D adventure called The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One. Episodes are going to be coming out once every 2 weeks. So it's a little different than Critical Role in that way. But yeah, did I miss any glaring way that you would describe this?
I thought you did a great job. And for you guys who you don't really quite know what an audio only experience is like, I would say you just got to listen to the first episode. But it honestly, this is the weirdest nostalgia hit for me. It reminds me when I was really little and my mom, when I was going to bed, would turn on a story time or something. And it's not just a narrator talking, but you have the sounds, you run the character runs into a lion, you hear a lion roar, or the sound of stampeding elephants. Well, in the same way, this isn't people who got around a microphone and just started talking. It is an audio studio produced experience, and it's so well done, well put together, that I think everyone should check it out. Which I'm talking to the choir. If they're watching this video, they're already like, yeah, okay, let's do it. So Anyway, I just think it's worth mentioning that it's not just a Zoom recording that someone uploaded the audio. Like this is an actual really cool thing. So
Correct. Yeah. And I'm glad you said that because I mentioned the four actors, if I can call them that, that are playing in this, but there's actually like a fifth member of this team, Taylor Moore, and I'm glad I
yeah, good
didn't want
job.
to omit them. They're the ones they work for a company called Dark Horse, I believe. It's like a production company, I think. But Taylor's the one that like produced the episode and composed it, and is the one that adds all the post production effects, like the music and the sound effects. And yeah, it's basically like an audiobook meets a D&D campaign.
Yeah.
Um, which we'll probably touch on that a bit more later, but just wanted to give you guys the brief overlay for anybody that just, like I said, is a Pixelist fan and clicked on this video wanting to know what is this. Definitely check it out. I think, Blake and I are both on the same page as far as that goes. Two thumbs up. Especially if you're a Critical Role fan, I think you will enjoy this. But even if you're not, if you're a podcast listener, I don't think you can go wrong here.
Right.
Other than that, quick last announcement here is our channel just hit 5,000 subscribers. So if you're new to us or if you're not, definitely check out a video on the channel. It'll probably be either the video before or after this one
Right.
that you're watching right now. We put together a little giveaway announcement. You can find more information there on what exactly we're doing, but long and the short of it is we're giving away a copy of Tal'Dorei Reborn, and you just have to be a subscriber and comment on that video. So not this video, but the other one. It'll
You can
be
comment on this one too,
yeah. I
though.
mean, please, help us with the
Yeah.
algorithm. Comment on both, but I'm sure we'll maybe still get like one comment that's like, "I'm here for the giveaway."
Yeah.
Um, but
Poor
yeah,
guy.
other than that, are you ready
I'm-
to
Bro,
launch
I'm
in?
ready. I'm excited to talk about this finally.
Me too, man. So again, if you're new to us, or even if you're not, what we like to do is, well, for Critical Role, which is another similar thing
Yeah.
to this, for
Long form content.
yeah. So for long form content like this, Blake and I like to start with a recap of what we're talking about, and then after that, we launch into our full discussion.
Right.
But for our recaps, we cut those out and host them separately on YouTube. In Critical Role's case, it's such long form content. It's nice to have the quick recap just accessible. So our plan is to do the same thing for this. That might evolve a bit as we go on and kind of get a feel for what this is going to be like. But if you happen to find yourself on just that recap, check down the description box below if you want to see our full episode. And without further ado, let's get into it. Quick little again disclaimer, I guess, is this we are talking about episode 1 today of The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One, but there were also preludes that were released, and there were also then and nows that were released, and it actually gets a bit complicated, but I am going to give a brief recap of the preludes, and then we may also dive deeper into it at a later date if we decide to cover the children's adventure more in depth. But for now, going to briefly recap that, and then we will launch into our full recap of the actual episode. Okay, so for the preludes, and Blake, please jump in and
Sure.
fill in any gaps here. But we are essentially introduced to 3 snippets, one from each of the main characters, as they were children. And the first one we get is of Suvi as a child, and it's basically this sequence where she and her parents and a few other characters are escaping from what I believe to be the Citadel. We can maybe talk more about that in a minute.
Silbury.
That's where they go to, I'm pretty
Oh,
sure.
right. Yes.
From
Sorry.
the
Yeah.
So they teleport away to Silbury,
Yeah.
and there's this discussion that happens. And again, Suvi is a young character. They decide what's best for her is to send her away while the adults continue on with their mission, whatever that may be. So Suvi is placed in a carriage and sent toward Grandmother Rin's house, where she is told to behave. The next segment we get is of Ame, and her segment is basically as a young girl again in this cottage, which we come to find out is Grandmother Rin's cottage, and she's just doing chores and kind of working around the farm.
Up to
And
hijinks.
yeah,
You know.
exactly. And I think that's pretty much it for that, unless
Yeah,
there's
no,
okay.
that's fine.
And then
Yeah.
in the final segment, we get introduced to Ursulon, the final playable character, and he is a wild one, which basically means this spirit creature. And we are in the spirit realm when we are getting this section of the story. And he is with his father, who is this enormous bear spirit. He has a ton of siblings, and it's basically hijinks with those siblings until Ursulon goes through a portal to the real world. And there he comes across this knight, Circurin, and awesome scene here, but he
Hmm.
actually gets a pauldron of Sir Kieran's armor and basically learns about the concept of quests and honor and becomes
Hmm.
infatuated with these ideas. So
Yeah,
then
and
Urs,
we
go ahead.
go ahead.
I
Well,
was
I
just
was
gonna
gonna say,
go ahead, go ahead.
all I was gonna say is we also, and we'll to cover this in our discussion, but we get a little bit of world building too. In that, the and I don't know the name of the world. There were some names named, but basically the spirit realm is kind of considered like this sort of, not mythical isn't the right word because people, they know it exists, but anytime Ursulon is greeted for someone not in the spirit world, he's typically called honored guest or honored
Mm,
friend. And there is like this sort of um, intrigue around people from the spirit realm and this level of reverence
mm.
for those creatures as well. So a little snippet of world building for those of you guys who are interested in that.
Yeah, so much deep world building in this episode in general. But yeah, I kind of am. I'm. We'll talk about this in the discussion. So, Ursulon gets this pauldron and has this experience with the knight, and then he travels back through the gate back to the spirit world, um, and that's essentially where the preludes end. So that leaves us now with launching into episode one, The Open Door, which, again, compared to those preludes we were just talking about, this takes place many years later with the children now adults. So the episode begins almost like any great D&D campaign should, at a tavern. Um,
Has to, right?
yep. And this is an unnamed tavern, we're told, but it's commonly referred to as the Tavern by the Well. And here we meet our first PC proper, and it is Ursulon Toma, who is this 6'5", dark-skinned, muscular male with red hair, braided back, and played by Lou Wilson. He works at this tavern and is basically just lifting heavy barrels, working while
Yeah,
he kind of listens to this old peddler that we're told is kind of just passing through the tavern. And he's a storyteller. And he's basically got a group of children and others enraptured by what he's talking
right.
about. And he's kind of talking about like the wild ones in the world and how traveled
Yeah,
he
the
is.
formation of the world
Mhm.
and the
Some
history
deep
of the
lore.
world, and yeah, it's really interesting.
So this kind of perks Ursulon's interest because he is, of the spirit world. So he's kind of listening to this story, but he continues working, and he is next kind of interrupted or run into by the innkeeper's daughter, Rosalind. Um, and Ursulon actually is like staying in the stables as he works
Right.
here. And Rosalind confronts him and says like, "Hey, I didn't mean to, but I accidentally like kind of found your stuff in the stables." And um, amongst those things is a sword, the pauldron, and I think a music box. And she's basically just like kind of asking him about it and trying to learn more about him. And we come to find out that she basically has a huge crush on him,
Yeah.
and that's that's
It's
like
so
where this is
good.
coming from.
Yeah. I loved,
Um,
yeah, and Brennan basically, sorry to interrupt, but it's like she has a crush on you, but she's also realizing how awkward it is now that she's admitting she went through your things.
Yeah,
So,
it was a great scene, and Ursulon isn't like, it's not like he's like straight up rebuking her, but he clearly isn't like just about this romance in the moment by any means. But they're quickly interrupted by this peddler, the storyteller, who comes out and basically is like, "Hey, like I know what you are," referring to Ursulon and knowing that referring to the fact that he is a wild one. And he basically says that, you could fetch a pretty penny. Like, I bet people, like, I know people that would pay a lot just to, like, to
mhm,
get you or
yeah,
get the information, And Ursulon then realizes that in addition to this peddler, there are several other people that are, like, surrounding him now. Because of this, Ursulon drops his glamour form And so he no longer is this 6'5", humanoid. Instead, he is like this 7'5" enormous like bear creature. And he
Yeah.
describes it as having like rabbit hind legs and like huge claws, but like a feline face. And essentially what happens is he doesn't really want the smoke in this moment, so Ursulon goes invisible. And he scurries and grabs his things from the barn that I talked about earlier, goes invisible and uses the horses in the stable as kind of like a distraction
Right.
and makes a run for it. The peddler is like a spellcaster and does, even though he's invisible, does cast like some spells and ends up taking a large chunk of Ursulon's health away. But he does successfully escape. And that ends like this first intro to the episode. And we actually cut to 5 years later. And in this next segment, we pick up in the middle of an endless white sand desert where this massive like beacon of civilization stands in the middle of it, which is known as the Citadel. And basically, we get this scene of this large procession and celebration of soldiers returning home from war. And gathered around are many like city officials, both like from the war aspect of things, but also from like the academic aspects of the city. And among these is an archmage who is fast asleep. And this archmage is flanked by his apprentice, who is the second PC, played by Aabria Iyengar. This is Sovereign Cadbaracat. I don't know if I'm saying that right. She pronounces it really quickly. That's my best stab at it. But she's 6 feet tall, medium brown skin, very lithe and very rigid, with bright teal hair. And she kind of like nudges awake the Archmage as the ceremony continues. And as it does, Suvi recognizes one of these returning soldiers as someone she knows from school, a mage named Silver. And he is actually being honored and commended for his deeds in this battle. And he is actually being granted like station and title to dwell within the villa in the Hall of Heroes. He kind of steals a glance at her and she blushes. And we're told that Silver was the type of wizard that was either going to go to war and die or come back and be fast tracked to becoming one of the great war wizards due to his like deeds. And clearly the latter is what has happened. After this returning ceremony, Suvi finds herself at a private luncheon with some of like the heads of the Citadel and a very select few of these returning heroes. And here she runs into her old friend Steel, who is this older woman with red hair, wearing this awesome golden armor with a sword and a spell book. And we are told that she is the sword of the Citadel.
Yeah.
Um, they quickly catch up, and Suvi basically laments her duties with the Archmage, Archmage Silence. I can't remember if I said that was the Archmage's
Yeah.
name or
No.
not.
Yeah. You're right. You're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Saying that like I feel like my talents are wasted. I'm just babysitting this old man. And Steele is like, listen, you're one of the youngest wizards to ever be on the fast track to leadership. In fact, you're the first one that's ever been and immediately moved to that track upon entering the Citadel. And so he's like, yeah, but I just want a chance to prove myself. Like my talents are being wasted.
Right.
And Steele points out that Suvi's late parents were some of the most respected mages, her father being the provost of the eighth and her mother being the sage of the fundament. But at her age, they were just junior apprentices, and they would do anything to trade places with her in that moment. So they continue kind of walking and talking with Suvi saying that, she's just tired of like this being her whole life. She only knows the Citadel. She really just wants to go on a walkabout or like, can I just go on a quick break? And Steele says, well, actually, you might just get what you wish for, but I'm so sorry that I got to give you this bad news. I feel like all I've done your whole life is give you bad news. Just about that time, just like that time when you were a kid and I had to tell you about your parents. Um, and she says, unfortunately, Grandmother Wren is not well, and we don't think she has much time left. So the leadership of the city has deemed it okay that you be permitted to travel through a travel door to go visit her and, essentially say goodbye. So Steele gives Suvi some things to bring to Grandmother Wren, including a book and a sealed scroll. And then she also gives Suvi personally, for her to keep, her own like wizard staff that is this like
Yeah.
beautifully described staff, and she actually puts a little glamour magic on it that makes it look like just like a walking stick until she doesn't want it to. And she also gives her a little communication device so that Suvi can stay in contact with the Citadel. Um, other than that, they then kind of travel. It's a really great moment between them, but they travel to this like section of the city where these travel teleportation doors are cast, and one is such casted. And Suvi walks through where she will be teleported to the town of Silbury, which she will then have to travel the rest of the way to the city of Toma and Grandmother Wren's house on her own. And that is where I will throw it over to you, my friend.
Yeah, there's no like clean break, so we'll just go from there. Yeah, so Suvi takes this travel door to Silbury, and it's her first time back here since the last time she was here, which was in the prelude where she was trying to escape with their parents. And there's this great scene in this moment where there in the prelude there was this mural that was defaced and burned from like all of these fires happening in the city, and now it's been restored, and Suvi can't bring herself to look at it because it just hurts too much to think about the last time she was with her parents. But she sort of steals herself, and Brennan actually gives her the option and basically says, hey, would Suvi have made it in time to see Grandmother Wren,
Oof.
or would she not? And Suvi says, yeah, I think she would have made it. So having said that, we actually jump from Silbury to a small cottage not far to now an adult Ame who has sort of grown into this apprentice role for Grandmother Wren. And we get another little note of world building in that Ame is a witch and Grandmother Wren is a witch. And witches in this world have sort of like this sort of sage like esteem to them. There's a real blessing ascribed to interacting with a witch and getting help from a witch. And in that way, there is a young couple who has arrived to the cottage to basically ask for advice. They are a little bit disappointed that Grandmother Wren is too sick to be seen, but Ame presents herself and says, I'd be happy to help you. Comes to find out that this couple has been married for 6 months and desperately wants to have a baby, but has been having no such luck. So they've come essentially to Grandmother Wren to get a blessing or get advice on, what can we do to have a baby? And there are some really fun details. Brennan has Ame do an insight check, and with a 25, reveals that the husband is uncomfortable talking about essentially his sex life with his wife with a woman like Ame who is so beautiful. But there's a little detail there that's going to come up a little bit later. Ame essentially agrees to help. She steps outside of the cottage with the two of them. And in this interesting sense, we're not quite sure what it is, but she seems to sort of like she seems to like attune with nature and like the world around her, and basically seems to ask the environment around her like what's going on here. And Brennan, taking the voice of this like nameless or unnamed whatever this is, the universe, I guess you could say, reveals that they will have a child. It will be a precious, beautiful child. However, the husband will cheat on the wife and will ultimately leave her. Which is like, men are dogs. So all that to say, knowing that they will get pregnant, Ame hands over a ring to the husband and says, basically, wear this when you guys are making love and you'll have a baby. And there's this funny scene where he puts it on his finger and she's like, it doesn't go on your finger. And he's like, she's like, don't put it on your finger. So all that to say, they move on, they leave. And, with the detail of his infidelity, there even is this small point of when they're walking away, he looks back kind of, I feel like it was kind of flirty in some way back at Ame, when she mean mugs him, is kind of like, get out of here. All that to say, Ame then decides to make breakfast for Grandmother Wren, who has been bedridden and actually hasn't left her room in the past week. So she brings up some oatmeal and an egg and comes into Grandmother Wren's comfy room where she is essentially on her deathbed and is unable to eat more than a few bites of her meal. It's a very sweet scene where Grandmother Wren talks about kind of like how much she appreciates Ame, and you know, how Ame is basically the next in line for really what she herself has been doing. And this is where it gets kind of fuzzy because Ame's kind of like, "What are you talking about?" And then rather than getting farther in this conversation, grandmother Rin starts basically it's almost seeming to lose her mind a little bit as she's sort of passing away. And she starts asking, is Suvi still in the library? Is Ursulon still downstairs? Things like that. And Ame, realizing the situation, is basically like, yeah, they're great. You know, whatever. And grandmother Rin, basically referring to the children's adventures, basically says, my house was never as full as that summer when you all were here. Um, all this to say, they get interrupted by Suvi arriving at the cottage. There's an interesting detail where Suvi is asked to make a luck check and rolls like a 4 or a 5. And in getting off of her horse, her foot strikes the road, which Brennan implies is some ominous detail. And then as Suvi enters the cottage, the sign pointing to Silbury seemingly gets like ripped off its post, nails and all. She comes inside. She has this precious reunion with Ame, seemingly seeing each other for the first time in years. And they rush upstairs to see grandmother Rin to basically say their goodbyes. And as they're having these the sweet moment, the sweet back and forth, grandmother Rin basically says, now remember the details that I've told you, the things that I've said. Remember, Suvi, there's things you'll need to tell her with her consent, secrets that we haven't been able to share with people. And they're kind of like, what are you talking about? You never told me. Ami's like, you never told me anything. And she's like, yes, I did. And then with this amazing perception check, Ame notices this little black or gray smoke coming out of grandmother Rin's mouth. And it's revealed that she is cursed and has been cursed. And it's actually revealed that Ame too has been cursed. And this curse seemingly is preventing one or both of them from revealing information to one another that would be seemingly important. Grandmother Rin, realizing that she's on the brink of death, lacks the strength to continue this conversation. So her familiar, this rooster Taro, who's been the bane of Ame's existence for her story, flies into the room, speaks, and basically says, we have an opportunity to break this curse. Don't worry, we have them right where we want them. Your job is to go upstairs into the attic and get the sword Wavebreaker, and you'll be able to use that to break the curse, essentially. And that is when, again, seemingly referencing the children's adventure, that is when they blurt out, we gave the sword to Ursulon as kids. And they're like, how could you do this? Like, why would you do this? But they say, okay, no worries. It's your job now to find Ursulon. And grandmother Rin, in the final moments before she dies, basically says, Suvi as my witness, Ame, I leave to you the house, and I transfer over to you my title, which is the last witch, the witch who has protected, I think it was the world's heart. This
Yeah.
seemingly mystical, amazing source of power that Brennan describes as being a rival power to that of the Citadel in terms of like its magnanimousness. And she passes on, and the episode ends with everyone kind of being like, "What?" So that
One
is.
final
Oh yeah,
detail.
go ahead.
The episode ends with a stranger coming
Oh
walking down the
yes,
road toward them.
yes, that's right. Because they've been even Suvi's been looking out the window, and time has been passing faster outside the house than in the house. So it's actually evening. And like Will mentioned, as she sort of looks out, thinking about where Ursula could be, she sees this figure with some ominous music that
Yeah.
hits
Yeah.
as this happens. So that is our recap for episode 1. A little bit longer, maybe. I'm not sure. But all that to say, if you're watching just the recap, check the link for our full discussion. Having said that, Will, our first experience with Worlds Beyond,
Our
what'd
first
you think?
indeed. I loved it, man. I loved it. And I can I can wax poetic in the different ways, but I'll save that for later in the discussion because I don't want to weigh us down too much. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Exandria Unlimited Calamity was kind of my first real exposure to Brennan DMing, and uh, I mean, you know this, but for anybody that hasn't seen us before, we freaking fell in love with that. So I was very excited to see him, behind the captain's seat again, and
Right.
wasn't disappointing. I've got more to say, but I'm going to leave it there for now. What did you think?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll try to get myself then too from waxing too poetic, though I want to at some point. I adored this. I thought this was so. I didn't. It's like I had low expectations. I just didn't know what to expect,
Yeah,
and I thought, to quote Brennan, incredible. it
incredible.
was. Yeah, it was so phenomenally produced. Brennan, which I want to talk about as like an actual separate point.
Hmm.
Brennan is such an amazing storyteller
Hmm.
and descriptor.
Yes.
I'm furious that I know I will never match how amazingly talented he is. And the characters, Erika Ishii had only experienced through those couple episodes in campaign 3 of Critical Role, and thought she was fine, but I just didn't think much beyond that.
Hmm.
And then Aabria I knew from season 1 EXU, and Kaimal, and then Calamity. Always loved her. Lou Wilson, loved him from Calamity. These three people, just like, I mean, separate from that, were phenomenal in this episode. And I am extremely excited for where this goes, and angry that I have to wait 2 weeks for every episode. I mean, I could not have higher praise for how much I enjoyed the preludes and episode 1.
Yeah, right there with you. And yeah, Brennan. I was trying to think about this actually the past couple days, because I've been listening to the children's adventure for the past few days, and it's I, I don't know how to best describe it, but he's just so gifted at like eloquently and beautifully describing things, to put it like in a really probably dumbly simply simple way. Um, but it's just so like, I don't know, it's so like
He's
intoxicating, or just to listen to
Yeah.
him describe something.
So I actually listened, and Will, you know this before our listeners, I listened to the preludes in episode 1 with my wife, because we'll be driving around somewhere listening, and there were so many times where we would pause it and just be like, "Wow, the way he said that was." He just has a way with words, and it's
Mhm.
interesting because I've always thought of Matt, and this isn't not to like Matt versus him in any way, obviously, but Matt's obviously always been incredibly gifted at his eloquent descriptions and sort of world building, like kind of painting the canvas. I think the difference with Brennan is Brennan does that as well, but Brennan's descriptors are so much more intimate and personal. So like I think about times, and I wish I could think of a specific example, but he would just he would say things that I could feel myself experiencing. Like it talks about like Suvi with her mom, and like she's tucking herself close to her mom's jacket, and like her snot from the cold is like on the jacket. Or I think about talking about Grandmother Rin's room and how it has like the whatever the wallpaper it was, but you couldn't really quite tell because there were so many like heirlooms and trinkets. And it made me think about my grandmother's house, So like it's just so his descriptions are so precise and so personal. There's another one that he did where he talked about Grandmother Ren's house and Suvi arriving for the second time, and how previously it was like, it was a house. It was great. But now the phrasing he used was, now the house looks tired, which
Mhm.
I thought was such a, it wasn't like a thesaurus word. He used the word
Mhm.
tired, and
Right.
yet it meant so much for the state of how the house was. But I adored this whole thing, and I especially loved Brennan's just world building. Really, his DMing, I guess.
Yeah. He's a master, and both of us kind of have come from a Critical Role background, and Matt too is a master. And before I had ever experienced Brennan, I was like, there's probably no one on earth that is on Matt Mercer's level. And I had no business saying that because it's not like I've watched a million DMs, but you could just tell with how good Matt is. And so it's so cool to see Brennan, who in different ways, like
Mhm.
I don't like, maybe this is a whole nother video for us to kind of dissect this. I don't want to get too lost on it, but it's just so cool how they're both like so good, and but they're different, like
Mm.
which I and then I here I am waxing poetic, but it just kind of, we've talked about this before, like don't try to be Matt Mercer for those of you that are like DMing out there. And it just goes to show that, like, yeah, don't be Matt Mercer and don't be Brennan either. Obviously be your own person, but like you can excel in so many different ways as a DM. So I don't know, it just kind of gave me like almost DM inspiration to know that, like,
Yeah.
they're different, paths you can go on, and all of them can be phenomenal. Obviously, Matt and Brennan do share a lot in common as well, but I think they're very distinct in their styles.
Brennan is so good at off the cuff, like meaningfulness. Like he's very comfortable with like his players collaborating with what happens, and then like it's like I'm like, does this guy have like a book of like amazing analogies or metaphors or one liners
Yeah,
or
yeah,
I'm just thinking about even like when Suvi's talking to Stone, he just had a couple of lines that were just like, I was like, man, he just whipped that out so carefree, and yet it was so like poignant.
yeah.
Um, and I think I haven't seen any of his Dimension 20 stuff. Shame on me, but I know he goes for the throat for his listeners in the sense of like, and I joked with you about, I guess there's something in the children's adventure that happens. I'm not sure what, but the Reddit thread was like, why does Brennan like hurting people? But we saw it in Calamity too, which to this day is still, I need to, my wife and I were going to go back and watch it again. Um,
we
but
were
it,
we were talking about doing like a Discord rewatch with like the Pixelist community. So we
oh,
haven't
that'd be
planned it
great.
yet, but we should figure out a good time.
Yeah. I guess I should know about that since one of the Pixelists. Yeah, but to this day, still, like I remember when you and I finished Calamity, we were like, that was the best story I've ever experienced. And now, several months later, I feel the same way. I'm still just like, man, the way he creates tension and involves emotion is so palpable and personal. I keep using that word, but I just can't think about any other way to describe it. It's just so, I feel like I'm there.
Mhm.
Even like down to the level of like him talking about the mural and how it was like defaced from like the smoke and the fire. And then now here it is restored and it's whole. And I feel like there were so many implications. And I don't get so in the weeds, which so I apologize, but just like, the city's kind of moved on, but here's Suvi who clearly hasn't moved on.
Yeah.
And all of that was sort of implied just in the simple fact of presenting the mural again and then Aabria opting not to look at it. Like that little tiny stuff just for me says so much about the characters in the world. But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm getting long winded, but you know.
Another thing I like about Brennan, no, I'm just kidding. But we could sit here all day. But I think
Yeah.
you said poignant, and I really like that. I think that's a great way to describe what I am trying to describe about him. It seems like he can just be poignant at the drop of a hat, And like you
Yeah.
said, it's like, does he does he have a book where he has like all these things written down and he could just go to them? But I know he's been DMing for like almost his entire life, so I guess part of
Yeah.
that just comes with the experience. But yeah, fantastic. And I'm gonna put you on the spot now because you like this so much, but right before we started, you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna listen to the children's adventure. You got to, bro.
Is it good?
Yes, it's so good. I'm like
Oh
halfway through
wow.
right
Okay.
now.
Well, it's behind the Patreon, which I'm sure I'm gonna support the Patreon, but I just hadn't jumped into it yet because I hadn't got on the Patreon yet. So
Yeah, and no rush, but like I said, I've been listening to the past few days when I'm like going on my walks and stuff, and I'm gonna be sad when I run out and I catch up. I'm about halfway through right now, but very good, and that's all of you as well. I know maybe everybody can't afford the Patreon, but if you can, I would say it's very much worth it. Children's Adventure has been phenomenal, and they are going to release. So the episodes come out bi-weekly. On the off weeks, they're releasing what's called fireside chats, which is essentially
right.
like if you're familiar with Critical Role, it's like the Talks Machina or the Four Sided Dive. And I actually listened to that today, and it was it's not must listen in terms of like you're going to be missing out on things from the story by any means, but it's fun. You know, it's kind of like this, but they're the ones doing it in a way.
Is
Um,
everyone there, by the way? Because no one with four-sided dive, it's you never know. It's only like certain people, but
right. For at least episode one, everyone was there, including Taylor Moore, who is
oh,
the
cool.
um,
Yeah.
the composer and stuff we were talking about earlier. Um, I kind of I kind of lost my train of thought there.
Well, you were talking about the children's stories and
Oh yeah.
the fireside
And
chats.
for this episode, Blake and I have both listened to the preludes, which is it's equivalent to the first episode of the children's adventure. So we're probably going to reference stuff that happened in that. But other than that, I won't really reference anything from the episodes of the children's adventure that I have seen, with maybe a couple of exceptions, and I will give like a spoiler warning. Not there's no like no moments I'm really going to spoil, but there are a couple things I wanted to bring up which I can't remember what episode they happened in. So they might have even happened in that first one. But yeah, just general disclaimer there. Yeah, I guess let's actually talk about the
Yeah.
episode now.
Maybe it makes sense to talk first about kind of each character and like because like I have like
Yeah.
details about like Suvi and Ursulon and Ame that are all separate from one another, and then there's like the actual sort of like in scene like
Hmm.
that whole interaction that I have questions about that I want to
Yeah,
talk about.
that sounds good to
Um,
me.
okay, so and I don't even know really know to go like direction wise. Or maybe just generically starting. Let's talk like their characters. Ursulon class. I mean, are they doing typical classes? I know Ame's a witch, which there isn't a witch.
That's
But
a homebrew class that they created.
okay,
I found this out during the fireside chat, and they will be eventually releasing that at some point.
okay, cool.
But
So she's a homebrew class. Suvi is stereotypical wizard. I'm guessing.
presumably, yeah.
Okay, and Ursulon is what?
I don't know. I think it like some people probably do, but I haven't like dug deep enough to find out. I do think that he might be not like literally in world, but in mechanics. I think he might be a changeling. Um,
Oh, okay.
but like I don't know if they would ever call him a changeling in this show. I think to just mechanically that's like the stats for his race as like this
I
wild
was
one that can change shape. That might be
I thought he
completely
was
wrong.
like I thought he was like a furball or something. And I thought like glamour was like a visage form or something.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
I think that's fair to say, and like that might even be the case. I don't even remember where it might have been in the fireside chat or it might have been somewhere, but I feel like Brennan used the word changeling, but he might have just been speaking
yeah.
like not like maybe he wasn't saying like you're literally a changeling. Maybe he was just referring to the fact that he can shift between glamour.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, long and the short of it, I don't know
Okay.
what class he would be.
And then like point on world building, we have the Citadel, who is seemingly it's the language is imperial, I think, right?
I think yeah, I
And
think so.
is presumably like the ruling. I think of like the Empire in Star Wars, but not necessarily as perceived evil. But and I say that only since because like the Empire, the outer reaches of the galaxy are kind of fringe areas. And I think the advice that Stone gives Suvi is like, hey, outside of the Citadel, you kind of want to be a little bit more um, precarious, I guess.
Steel, right?
Steel, thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
Stone's her mom. That's right. Yeah, Steel's like, hey, you want to be just a little more subtle. Um, but so you have the Citadel. They're at war with someone, right?
Yes. So yeah, I think the Citadel is clearly like the ruling of at least a portion, maybe not like the rulers of the whole world. Not that you were saying
Right.
that.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, the two things I picked out, which they might be one and the same, was the Dominion and the Protectorate.
Right. Yes. Right. And because Steele mentions both of them in giving Suvi advice on, wasn't it like, hey, there might be people who aren't happy that you're around, but they're not necessarily from the Dominion or the Protectorate.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the spirit world. Are we
Right.
talking like Feywild compared to like the material plane? Is that
Yeah, I think
okay?
so. Because
Okay.
again, I don't remember when it was, but I think I heard Erica like just call it the Fae, which I'm sure was just like a slip of the tongue because that's what she's used to. But I'm pretty sure that is kind of like the idea to the
Okay.
relationship between the two worlds.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. No, that's good. Okay.
which
Go ahead.
it's just it's super. Again, neither of us have seen a Dimension 20 campaign, but I'm familiar with them insofar as I know that they're like just kind of short, at least compared to something like Critical Role, which has 100 plus episodes. They're more like 8 to 12 or whatever.
Right.
um so it's, again, even though I didn't see those, I'm really excited to see a long form campaign with these people, with Brennan DMing, and of course, Lou, Aabria, and Erica. And so the point I'm getting to here is I'm so excited to see this world that Brennan
Yeah.
has created and fleshed out. For those of you that are Critical Role, maybe you watched the GM roundtable that Brennan, Matt, and Aabria all did together. Maybe you didn't. But one of like the most funny moments from that was Brennan kind of like razzing Matt, but in like a complimentary way, because they were talking about like Tal'Dorei Reborn, and he's like, "You put out a whole book." He's like, "I work for like 6 episodes, and that's all I got to do, and you're out here putting out an entire book on one continent." And he's like, "And you have another book for another continent." And he was just talking about like how crazy that is. So I'm just excited to see him kind of do something similar now. And in that first fireside chat, they were saying that at some point, and it might be years from now once this campaign's over, that they will similarly release like a campaign setting for this world.
Oh, that's great.
So
I
that'll
love
be
that.
exciting. And I think the world is called Umora. I don't know if I'm pronouncing
Okay.
that right, but
Okay.
Umora.
Yeah, there
Um
were some names mentioned, and maybe Umora was the one that I'm thinking of that I just they said it and I lost it. And since it's, audio only, you're also not seeing it happen.
right.
But which by the way, I didn't when I found out what this would be, I kind of was like, is this weird? I don't know. But I felt right at home listening to it. Like hats off to Taylor Moore. I mean, it so well produced. I almost found myself envisioning it better in a different way. Better's not the right word, I guess, but just differently than I would a CR episode, where I'm like watching reactions and like seeing
Mhm.
interactions. Like I kind of found myself kind of lost in my thoughts of like envisioning, like there was even like a scene at maybe when he was describing the house, um, grandmother Wren's cottage where Joy, my wife, was like, I can literally see it in my head. Which, what a compliment to Brennan again. But how did you feel about the audio only take on it?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to talk about this. I too, it's not that I was hesitant, because I've listened to a lot of Critical Role episodes in their podcast version on my commute to work back in the day, so it wasn't anything new to me. But part of me was like, oh, I wonder if I will kind of miss just the chance to watch, because one of the awesome parts of CR is seeing their reactions and seeing like their table interactions with each other. um but that being said, I think this is like, while it is very similar in that they're both D&D, narrative podcasts, there is like a stark difference where I think this really leans more like audiobook, like more produced.
Mhm.
And so I think I wouldn't want Critical Role to be that, but I'm also really excited to experience this in this way. The sound effects, when they first happened, it caught me off guard because I wasn't like expecting that. But then I really got used to it, and like you said, it really like it kind of immerses you in it.
Well,
And it,
sorry, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, quick fun fact again from that fireside chat for the episode one. One of the questions they were asked was like, "Is any of the stuff happening live while they're playing?" And no, it's not. Which obviously for some of that stuff wouldn't make sense for it to be there live. But like Critical Role has some background music playing live.
Yeah.
But for this, they said no, there's nothing. So like them playing is just them playing with their voices. Everything else is added in post. Um,
It's just hard to do, by the way. It's hard to play and be in the mind of your character without little artifacts that kind of help you get into
Yeah,
it.
I
So,
was surprised to, I mean, again, imagine most of those things in post were in fact in post, but I was surprised to learn that there wasn't any like ambient music playing even.
yeah, yeah.
But just goes to show like how good not only Brennan is, but all of them are to be able to kind of really get that deep into it without, the performance enhancing drugs, let's call them, of, some of the things you can have for D&D.
Yeah.
Um
The first episode I listened to was the wild one that in now, and I didn't finish it, and is before they looped it all into the preludes.
mhm.
But the first sound effect was him being introduced and talking about the great bear, and then you had like
Yes,
the
with like the
blaring.
music.
Bro, that was the first sound effect, like the stampeding, everything kind of like coming together that sounded
Yeah.
just incredible, that I was like, oh wow, this is really cool. And like on your point of like emotion, it is different experiencing the player's emotion, but it's palpable. Like, and again, hats off to them for getting into their characters, but like in the prelude, like Suvi having to say goodbye to her parents, like you could tell Aabria was tearing up, was
Yeah.
choking up in that scene, which hats off to Brennan again of like drawing his players into that moment. um but I was absolutely experiencing the emotion of that and like saying goodbye to grandmother Rin and all of that, despite the fact that I couldn't see it. So I actually really loved the format.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to kind of go through a whole journey of this. I love audiobooks. So like this, which I've said it like 8 times, but this being like a marriage of a D&D actual play and an audiobook is like the most perfect thing
Mhm.
for me. So
Yeah,
um yeah, it did take like a slight getting used to, but like I'm just talking about like in the first 10 minutes really.
yeah.
But then I was all in. And again, shout out to Taylor Moore, just doing a fantastic job. Again, fun fact from the fireside chat is he'd never composed music before this. He literally learned how to do it for this.
The music was really good.
Yeah,
I
so
actually
that blew me
won it for
away.
my campaign. So I hope they release it
Uh,
at some point.
they are again from the
Oh,
fireside
hey.
chat. They said that. So here, I'll just cover this really quick. Things they said are coming down the pipeline at some point was the soundtrack, the campaign guide, the witch class, and they did say that we can expect guests to show up at certain points.
Oh, that's cool.
And then one thing that I was confused about is they mentioned like other GMs, but I wasn't sure if that was in reference to this story, like The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One might have a guest DM, or if they just meant like other stories that they will tell within Worlds Beyond Number.
Which, speaking of, I'm wondering how they're gonna organize this. Because if like it would almost, since Worlds Beyond Number can be a variety of different stories. If you're telling someone to check it out on Spotify, it gets kind of clunky when it's like, oh, well, like episode 7 through 19 is this story. You want to go to episode 20. Like, I just wonder if they'll do like season 1 is this, season
mhm.
2. I don't know how you organize that. I'm sure they've already kind of thought about it, but I am wondering how they'll manage organizing all of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess at the very least, it's Worlds Beyond Number, but this is called The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One. So maybe like each new thing will have a completely different
Yeah.
title.
Then
But
how
yeah.
long does the title get though? But okay. So I have some questions. I have kind of like a Q&A, like some things I want to softball with you on each character.
Okay.
Unless you have more like general like things that you
Um,
want to keep hitting on.
I have. It's one of those times where it just escaped me. So go ahead, but
Okay.
I may throw something random out when I remember.
Okay. So going back to starting with Ursulon, is a wild one. Wild ones seem to be like this. I mentioned in the recap, kind of like there's this reverence around them. We have the line from Grandmother Rin later on, you know, it's always like the right amount of time, whether they stay, what was it, like too long or not long enough, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
What do you think is like the dynamic between the spirit realm and Umora? I even think about Knights or Curran, who's like, honored friend, and just so I don't know. I'm curious, like your thoughts there.
Yeah, so I think I'm trying to I don't think this isn't a spoiler by any means, but I'm just trying to remember what episode this was in. I'm almost sure it was in episode 1 or the preludes, but let me know if it doesn't sound familiar. But Brennan described it as like the world before the world, like the world kind of, you know, adjacent and whatever. So the way I understood it is like this world almost the spirit world almost came first. Um and then I think it was grandmother or no, it was
The
the
peddler said
peddler.
that.
Yeah, yeah, the
Yeah.
peddler mentioned about how, and I'm paraphrasing here, but like the wild ones like found the secret, and that's like kind of what gave them magic. And then he said like
Yeah.
one wizard found the secret of where they found the secret.
Yeah.
um so to me that kind of sense that like, and I'm not talking about like temporally because then we're getting like super in the weeds, but it seems like the spirit world kind of came first, and that's where magic was first born and spirits first utilized it, and then it kind of slowly trickled into the mortal world. But yeah, the Feywild kind of,
Yeah.
I think that's the baseline of where this kind of blossomed from. But that's one thing I'm really excited to see, is that even though that is probably where it blossomed from, it could end up being completely different from that relationship as we know it in normal D&D. So I'm just really excited to see kind of like what Brennan does with it. But that's my general gist of it, is that it's just kind of like the fairy
Yeah.
spirit realm where magic is from. But I'm curious, and I don't want to like completely curve us off base because I want to hear what you think. But on that subject, I'm wondering if Ursulon's dad is like not necessarily like a god, but like part of like the pantheon
Yeah.
of
Sure.
whatever.
Right. Which, if he is, you're talking about the Great Bear, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Or yeah, I wonder if that would clue us into his class. Um, doesn't seem like he'd be like a warlock, so I would see he'd be like a homebrew thing, or think what other classes have like a deity, a cleric, maybe. He's a fighter, right? I mean, he has the Apollo. Maybe
yeah.
like a
Well,
paladin, maybe, or something. I don't know.
yeah. Well, even if his dad is just a god, let's just call it, or like a patron esque entity, I don't think that necessarily means Ursulon
Yeah, that's
is a
fair.
class that deals with a god.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
yeah, I got kind of paladin vibes from Sir Curran, so maybe he might. Which I don't
Yeah,
know why. It's not like we saw him do anything, I guess, but
but no, he was a knight, though.
yeah.
And explains what a knight is, and it's such a meaningful experience for Ursulon that you kind of get the impression that, man, when I grow up, I want to be a knight. It's presumably maybe why his glamour form is, this hot dude with, you know, armor and a sword,
Yeah.
and I wonder if that's why he's in Umora too. By the way, like, why is he not in the spirit world with everyone else, like hanging out with his brothers and sisters?
Maybe you need to
Yeah.
watch the children's adventure.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't have all the answers by any means, so like I don't, but which actually I'm gonna hold on to that for now. I'm gonna hold on to that for now.
Okay. 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 Well, that's actually my last comment on him. So, what do you have anything else on him?
I am just interested to find out, and this is true of all of them, but especially Ursulon, just what his story has been. This, because we got that 5-year jump after
Yeah.
the first little snippet with him. So that just kind of, especially like looking at it from like a DM or a storytelling perspective, that's like, okay, that's a ripe window. Like, why 5 years? Like, what has he
Yeah.
accomplished in that time? So I'm
He
very
is king.
interested.
No, just kidding.
So I'm very interested to see. But yeah, just in general, which we've talked about Brennan probably too much, but I'm just so excited to see him flesh out these aspects
Mhm.
of the spirit world, and even how he described that the peddler with, it was like a deck of cards or something, right? That he was like
Yeah.
casting spells with. Yeah, it was so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
I hope we see Rosalind again. Star-crossed lovers, man.
I don't know. I think maybe once he revealed his true form, she was like, "What?"
No,
And then,
she still helped him. Remember, she like put the bucket on the dude's head or whatever.
oh yeah, well, yeah. I mean, she's gonna help him. I think it was more of like, I hope this doesn't awaken something in me. That was kind of where I was going with it. But
Too late.
um, So moving on from him, the next like meaty story for me is Suvi.
Mhm.
Um, why does everyone have an S name?
Okay, I was gonna bring that up as well. All the wizards have S
Yeah,
names. So
yeah.
we got which
Which,
Suvi, I don't know if we should even count because that seems like it's her real name. Where the other ones seem like code names or nicknames to me.
well, I saw that with, I could see that with her parents, because Brennan asks, "What's like a word you would use to describe them?" And she,
Mm-hmm.
I thought she happened to, but
Same.
now I'm wondering if it was an intentional discussion because we have her mom Stone, her dad Soft, her mom's best friend Steel,
Did
the
Aabria
arch.
do Steel? I can't remember.
No,
That
Brennan did
was
Steel.
okay.
Brennan did Steel. Brennan did the Night Silver,
Silver,
I think.
Silence, the Archmage.
Yeah. So what's going on here? Why does everyone have an S name?
I don't know. I feel like like there's no way that's just coincidence.
The
Yeah.
town of Silbury, everything's an S, bro.
Like maybe Soft and Stone were a coincidence, and then Brennan like ran with that, or it was. But I don't think it was planned. At least that would seem almost disingenuous a bit if it was, or maybe
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyways,
Well,
I feel like it's not a coincidence.
I don't think it was planned in the sense of like, okay, hey, let's make sure it's S name. He asked like, well, how would you think of your parents? And so she gave like a sentence descriptor
Mm-hmm.
for her dad, like saying like my dad, he's soft and yet this, that, and whatever. And then she either before that or after that used the word stone for her mom. So maybe Brennan, as a master DM, started pulling, okay, here's something interesting we could start to put together. It's just such a odd and precise detail
Mm-hmm.
that I do wonder, like, where is this going? Like, what's the meaningfulness behind the use of this letter?
Yeah, and so Suvi starts with an S, but I think that part's a coincidence. And here's where I'm leading into that because that's clearly her name. For these
Right.
other ones, we don't. They seem like nicknames. I guess they theoretically could be their literal names, but if their name's Soft and Stone, why'd they name their daughter Suvi and not something similar? Anyway, I'm wondering if you get like in the wizard hierarchy of power or world or something, like maybe when you officially like reach a certain rank or something, you're given like your wizard name or like and so like
Mhm.
maybe that's why Silent Silver, whatever.
It does seem like there's either a lore, like reverence around the letter S, and like you said, you hit a certain rank and you get your name with the S, which I could see, or since all these characters are from Suvi's point of view in sort of like a childlike way, I could see her like these are nicknames, which would set us up for an interesting. It would be interesting to because we can't see it. It'd be interesting to have a character in another person's story like that they know, and you come to find out that it's the same character but their actual name,
Yeah.
but it was the nicknames, you didn't put it together. I don't know, I'm kind of just rambling on here,
No, I
but
get I get what you mean. I actually had that same thought of like, is it because we're viewing this through the lens of Suvi and explicitly her memory in terms of the stone and soft and steel, but then steel in the present day in episode 1 refers to them as stone and soft. So that at
right.
least is taking it out of it. It's not
Yeah.
just Suvi, which I guess I guess you could, depending on how we're maybe we're being told this story. I don't know. Maybe there are still
Yeah.
frameworks to apply where it could still be technically Suvi's perspective in a way. But yeah, I noticed that too. So I'm glad you brought it up. I feel
Well,
like there's got to be something there beyond just coincidence.
notably, the only character from her story that doesn't have that name is was it Yonder? Or
Oh yeah, the
Yoren.
yeah the beast thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote down his name, but I don't know if I can find it quickly. But yeah, I was
I think it's
wondering.
Yoren
I
or
was wondering
something.
about that guy because I
He definitely
guess
had that guy vibes, but
yeah, he had like But I feel like he was a good guy though. But he had like, he was. I can't think of a good analogy, but like,
Like Professor Snape kind of vibes.
yeah, yeah. I wonder what he is because he turned into that like monstrous thing. Like, I wonder if
Yeah.
he is even a wild, like, or was he originally like a wild one? Maybe that.
I got kind of like a druid class shapeshift vibe, but it's tough because I couldn't tell. Um, was it just terrifying for Suvi as a child, and so she described it as a monster, or was it like I don't
Yeah,
know. But Brennan even mentioned like blood coming out of Yorn's mouth as he like shapeshifted, um, and also Taylor Moore with like the
the
bones popping and
ugh.
uh, yeah. So we were listening. My kids are in the car. And we were like, let's turn it down for this section. But yeah, I wonder what's happened to him.
Me too. I feel like, and there's no reason for this, but I feel like we could maybe see him again.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't know
for
why,
sure.
but
Yeah.
yeah. And
So
one last thing on the names, real quick, before we move on. If it is like some sort of code name or special name, I wonder if it's because like in this world, like there's power in knowing someone's real name. So like wizards don't want to be like, they
ah
don't want people to know their real names. So maybe they use code names.
yeah, it's
Just a
interesting.
weird toss out there.
No, I like that toss out. It's been done before. I can't think of like a game or a show where like knowing the true name. It's happened though,
Yeah.
where there was power in knowing the real name. And then recently in WoW, or in the previous expansion, there was like this thing around like it was called like your sin stone, and it was like basically like your sins in life. And if you possess someone's sin stone, you would like command like power and authority over them.
Ooh.
So people would hide their sin stones, and so in the same way, I could kind of see in the Citadel people kind of hiding their real name, or I don't know. I think you make an interesting guess there that I'm curious about for sure.
We'll have to
So,
see. Um,
um, go
what?
ahead.
Sorry, one last thing on if we're about to move away from Suvi a bit is I just
No,
thought it was
yeah, go ahead,
okay.
bro.
I thought it like, again. I just want to know more about this lore, but we got all these little juicy bits. I want to know more about the
Yeah,
society, but specifically learning that her father was provost of the eighth and her mother was sage of the fundament. Like, what are those things? I need to know.
I think
Don't have
Brennan just
anything more
being
to
a
say,
friggin'
but
amazing DM and just like, yeah, the fundament. I don't know. I mean, but I am curious. So help me kind of parse this together. There's presumably some kind of attack on the Citadel, and they have to leave. And when they arrive in Silbury, they're surprised to see that Silbury is also being attacked. Is that fair?
yeah, I think so. Which I'm really curious, like what was happening there, because the Citadel in the present timeline is intact; it's still fully functioning. So like, yeah, it really made me wonder what was occurring there that like these very powerful, influential people like had to flee.
Yeah, because we know there's the detail of Britain describes Stone as being when they open their eyes after teleporting to Silbury, how her mom sort of tries to hide the surprise of like the state of Silbury, like this isn't what's supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Silbury's presumably attacked as well. She's shuttled off in this carriage, and her parents stay behind to help the people of Silbury, to help fight in some way. We don't really know what happens,
They
but
had some
presumably,
mission, right?
yeah. Well, they had something they're supposed to do. They were looking for the carriage. They knew that was part of the plan. But again, who knows if he's just saying it to his daughter, but her dad basically says, "Hey, there's a lot of people I need to go help
Mm,
in this town who like still need me." So whether that was kind of like a warm like I'm gonna go help people, or like that was the actual mission, I have no idea, but doing something for sure. I'm not sure
yeah,
what.
I think it was more the former. Like they had whatever's going on that caused this conflict. I feel like they had some like thing they needed to do beyond just like helping the citizens of Silbury. Um,
Yeah.
and I wonder if that ties into what's kind of the hook at the end of episode one of like the secret that grandmother Rin knows, which I don't necessarily want to jump us there yet necessarily. We can, but I'm
Yeah.
wondering if
Well, let's table it for a second because that's where my mind's going too. But what else were you going to say about it?
Um, about
Or was
well,
that
that was pretty much it for
okay?
yeah,
Okay. Well, anything else about Suvi then?
yeah,
I will just say I have just such an again. Now we're kind of jumping into it, but I'm very suspicious about the Citadel
yeah. I
because of
mean,
the scene
yeah,
we got with the peddler, who presumably doesn't work for the Citadel, but had like the Imperial card, like is familiar with that faction, I guess. Um, and the fact that they live in a city that is so pretend, I guess, for like self comfort. Like Brendan mentioned, like the birds that were floating, like flying around that were fake,
hmm,
but to kind of create like this, oasis, I guess. Um, I don't know. I'm just very suspicious.
yeah.
So
Me too. I think there's not that they're like fully evil or anything, but it definitely feels like there's something going on. Probably some
yeah,
corruption. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I'm with you there.
Okay, let's move on to Ame. Ame has presumably lived her whole life in, from where we meet her, up until as an adult with grandmother Ren. She's not her actual granddaughter, though, is she?
I don't think so. No, and I
Okay.
want without getting too in depth on it because I don't know where it came from in the children's adventure, but there's some line about like her being like Suvi and that she was like left with grandmother Rin.
Yes, I
Um,
think it's in the preludes because I
okay,
think that's where I'm pulling it from too. But while Suvi went back and Ursulon departed as well, Ame presumably decided to live with grandmother Ren permanently
yeah,
and
became
becomes a
her
witch.
apprentice.
Yeah, her
Yeah,
princess. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And like I said in the recap, witches seem to be like this. It's a blessing to interact with one.
or at least
I don't
it
know if
can be.
it can be.
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, because you make a great point. I don't know if you're even referencing this, but I think of Steele's advice to Suvi that was basically like,
Mm,
watch out for witches.
yeah.
Because witches, the the humility of a witch has led to them being underestimated, which has led to the downfall of wizards in the past.
Yeah.
Um, Very cryptic piece of advice from Brennan. But yes, you're right. That's a great point of distinction. Can't remember where I was going with this now that I started talking about that. But
um yeah, I think you're just talking about witches in general, which they seem very like town at least well not all of them, but at least in grandmother Rin's case, like very like town medicine woman, witch
yeah,
doctor. Um
yeah.
but also I know we're trying to talk about Ame, but I want to shift into Rin a little bit. But before I do that, Ame is like the most enigmatic of all of them, I think. And well, I don't know if that's the right word, but the most like we don't learn much about her at all. She's the most
Choi pointed out we didn't get a physical description of her. She's the only
yeah,
one we
she's just
didn't.
small.
Which, yeah, which I don't know if they just, because we were talking about, she was like, "Do you think that was intentional?" I was like, "I don't know, maybe it was just like they just forgot."
Mm,
But both other characters got a now and present day Ursulon, whatever. Like, here, what do you look like?
right,
Except for her, she didn't get that.
right.
Oh, but maybe that's a tie-in to the Arcana check on how there's something temporal with the home and like time passes differently outside the home than in the home. Maybe she literally hasn't aged as much
Hmm.
as the other two. And that's why she's small, because she, like, think about what Suvi said. She came in and said, "Why are you the same height?"
Hmm.
Which I just thought she just never really grew, but maybe she
That's
literally
interesting.
hasn't.
That's interesting. Could be. Um
Is this our first Pixelist prediction?
it might be.
Anyway, I don't
Um
know.
I could see that. Yeah, the time dilation thing is interesting, which I guess let's wait on it until we're kind of more
Yeah,
talking
okay.
about that moment. But yeah, I thought it was very interesting that Ame is very of the three we learn the least about her. So
Yeah.
I'm interested to find out more. Um but yeah, I mean there's not I don't know, there's really not too much to to discuss there, unless you have anything
I
else.
no, I'll just say I loved Erika Ishii. I loved how she played this character, and loved the little detail of the ring. It
Yeah.
doesn't go on your finger. Just what a funny moment of improv from her. Oh, I was going to ask you though. Um, this is a placebo, right? I mean, she knows, like,
I
she's
think
not
so.
actually okay. Yeah, that's what I thought as well, but I wasn't sure what you thought.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, that could be a wrong assumption on our part, but that was because I mean, maybe like she used the magic to kind of get that information, so maybe there is some sort of like magic, and it took the form of her giving the ring. But for my money, I thought it was just kind of a placebo, and also kind of a way to get back at him for
right.
you know.
Yeah. Kind of humiliate him a little bit. But what was or awakened something in him? Maybe that's why he cheats on her. Um,
That's
but
kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I was kind of wondering. I was like, but I did wonder what was your take on her? She basically, you know, saw the future in a way. So what was happening there in your mind?
Yeah, I don't know. And uh, since this is a homebrew class, and just in general, we don't know exactly how they're kind of going to fudge the lines between what we know of 5e and whatever this is going to be. If that was like a specific spell, and especially in the homebrew class, maybe it was a homebrew spell. Maybe was it like she talking to the bees or something, or did I make that up? Like maybe it was
No,
like
she
a
wasn't.
speak with animals or something.
No, she wasn't talking to the bees. It was like a I can't find the words to describe it. It was like a she like became one with the like she was picking up all the tiny details so she could hear
Hmm.
the buzzing of the bees and
Okay.
but she like it was like she was communing with like nature or the
Hmm.
universe or something. Um
So,
but yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say it's a yeah. That's I guess that's my best guess is that I don't think they can just straight up tell the future, but like maybe that's something witches do, if not mechanically, but then I don't know the right word, but like just in world, like maybe that's like a function they serve. But I don't think it's like gonna be like this is 100% happening, like with a lot of like fortune telly stuff in media, it's like
No.
this is the prophecy, but you know what, you can change it if like certain things happen. So that's kind of how I took it, is that in a way she's communing with nature and can kind of get these glimpses, but they're not necessarily like 100% going to happen necessarily.
Yeah. I just think about is this is presumably something she got from grandmother Wren, which brings me into kind of the hook of, grandmother Wren, separate from the detail of being the heart, protecting the heart of the world, which I want to ask you about,
Hmm.
seems to be gifted in foretelling what will happen or scrying in some way to the point where someone has presumably cursed her or Ame, I guess, to remove information or to prevent them from talking about it. Because I think she tries to share again and she's like unable to like say it without
Yeah.
like the smoke billowing out. Which Brennan, having seen Calamity, he loves like the modify memory and does it so well. I don't begrudge him of it. Um, so I'm really intrigued by, I guess, her authority and power and how that's played into this curse and how she would not know she's been cursed. Really,
Yeah. So, I mean, just similar to what we kind of saw Ame do, I imagine Rin can do all of that times 100 probably. So, like, not that she can just literally see the future, but I'm sure she has all sorts of insight. And, um, wait, well, no, I'll hold that for now. But yeah, that curse, I, it could be a number of things, but I also got maybe the implication that not only could she not say those things, which I think that definitely was the case. That like she couldn't, like that was part of the curse. She couldn't explain to Ame what the secret was. But I think she also maybe did tell it to someone else. Like, did you get that impression? Like somebody like pretending to be Ame, like Rin told
oh,
the secrets
okay.
to, and then they went and stole them or whatever.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Because that's why she
Yeah.
thought like, yeah, I told you,
She said, I have a memory of telling you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how Ame's being cursed plays into that as well. Maybe she was cursed and like didn't notice this other person come in the house or leave the house. If indeed Grandmother Rin did tell someone pretending to be Ame this
Yeah.
secret. Um, but yeah, I'm guessing I don't know, maybe because she was so weak and close to death anyway, that's how they were able to curse a seemingly very powerful witch. Um, but leading into the well, one thing first, the wave breaker, which they said, you can like use it to scry and like find the secret and then also like cleave it free.
Disenchant.
Or
Yeah,
yeah.
disenchant. Yeah.
I'm wondering, and this is obviously intentionally vague, but I'm wondering what this secret is. It seems vastly important, but
Yeah.
it's seemingly not the heart of the world because that seemed to be like you're the guardian of it now, which
Yeah.
made me
Right.
think. And like, didn't he like explain to Suvi that you can sense this power here that rivals the
Yeah.
Citadel?
Yeah.
So clearly that isn't what was stolen.
Right.
Um, which seems like something that would want to be stolen, but again, we don't really know any of the details of things that are happening here. But um yeah, so because here we go, because the sword like can scry and disenchant or whatever, that makes me think that there was someone that was told these things and that person took them, so that's why they need the sword to find where it is and whatever.
Mhm.
um
I think it's got to be something related to the Citadel. I mean, going back, the fact that she pointed back to Suvi and said, like, you're going to need to get her permission to share this, like, I can only assume it's something to do with Suvi's parents, that event, that night, something that's happened, and that she's been cursed either by someone who's in their best interest for information not to get out, working for the Citadel, or tangentially related. I'm not sure, but um, I'm just thinking these are the big moments we've already had so far. It seems like we're going to tie back to them in some way.
I agree that it's got to be related in some form, but I don't know if it would be as explicit as just like the Citadel itself, like openly, because then I would feel like Suvi has
No,
has lived there her whole life, like has been there. If it was people there that were like trying to get her, which I'm
no,
kind of.
yeah, I think more like in the interest of the Citadel, someone acting in the interest of the Citadel, not like, let's have a band meeting. Okay, yeah, let's go curse grandmother Ren. Um, so
But okay, there's kind of two different things here and one of the ones I'm talking about might be slightly because I have a bit more knowledge from the children's adventure. But I think there's something going on with Rin and the secrets, and then there's also something going on with Suvi because her parents, when she was a child, sent her there to protect her. Like we aren't explicitly told like what that protection means, but clearly, like I think the words her mom says were like she can protect you in a way that she can't protect us. Um, Meaning that they were like I think hiding Suvi from someone,
yeah,
or something, some organization, um, which
but also that is kind of what you would tell your kid, though. Like, it's like, yeah, she'll take care of you, but oh, she can't. It's kind of like, well, why can't, like, when my toddler's like, why can't you be in my bed? I'm like, well, because I'm too big for your bed, but it's perfect. It's perfect for you.
yeah.
So I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying like it could be something, or it could also just be, Brennan being such a personal, heartbreaking storyteller.
Well, there's
So
a tiny bit of added context I can give, and I mean it's from the children's adventure, but it's not really like a spoiler. But I'll leave
okay,
it up to you if you want me to
yeah,
say
sure,
it or not. So I think it's in like if the preludes are episode 1, I think this happens in episode 2 of the children's adventure, and really quickly. It might even happen in episode 1. Well, I guess it didn't if you didn't hear it, but Suvi arrives and Grandmother Ren basically explains like these 3 rules for her to be under her protection about like things she has to do. So it makes it seem like literal like arcane kind of magic rules of the world. Like you must like,
yeah, okay,
and one of them is like you need to be home before dark. And I don't remember the third one, but the other one is do not step on a road.
bro. I was just gonna ask, was there something about the road? This is why I feel like I need to listen to the children's story, because you could just tell,
Yeah.
like in Ursulon's story, when they were like, and there's a music box. I heard Aabria and Erika go, oh, And I'm like, what is that? That must be something that happened. So,
Yeah.
okay.
So I
So
don't think
she,
it's going to be required listening for the average viewer, but like you're definitely going to want to listen to it.
okay.
But yeah,
So, gave
so
her the rule you must not step on a road.
step on a road.
Huh.
And so, yeah, leading back into what you were just referencing, I think that's why we got that moment of like, do the luck check, which I think was to if she would remember that or not, all these years later. So I also think leading into that, that might be the person that's arriving at the end. Like maybe Suvi stepped on that road and now whoever it is got a ping like, oh,
Yeah.
that's where she's at. And so I think maybe that's like I don't think it's Ursulon that was walking down the road. And it
Could
could
be.
be
Yeah.
anyone, but for my money, I think it is maybe related to the Suvi situation.
Have you
Just
gotten any context from the children's story? So whenever they realize that Grandmother Rin is cursed, Ame says it's like from when we were a kid or something like that. Like the curse from when we were a kid. So
yeah, I remember what you're talking about, and no, that for where I am, that nothing has
yeah,
happened
okay.
like that yet.
Because I'm wondering if that will be revealed in some way. Um,
I bet it will be in the children's adventure.
'Cause she seems sure of what it was. Like she would literally was like, "It's the curse from childhood." I don't know what she said, but
I have no idea, but the way I looked at that was that the smoke coming out of the mouth is maybe just like a telltale sign of curses in this world in general. Which it could be like a very literal specific curse that they are familiar
yeah,
with,
okay.
but I took it that way as like, if smoke out of your mouth just means you're cursed, and the curse could be any number of curses, but it's just kind
Yeah,
of like a general
yeah,
sign.
okay.
And speaking of a little context from the children's adventure, which I won't give the details if you don't want them, but the whole time dilation thing, she commented that like you remember this from Ursulon in the whatever. It's because similar to the connections we talked about with the Feywild, there is some timey wimey time is a weird soup stuff with travel to and from the spirit world. And what I wanted to ask you specifically is, do you think in those moments, and I know we talked about the theory of Ame maybe not aging in the same way because of the time dilation, um, but do you think that that is always the case? Like that Grandmother Rin's cottage is like in this dome, this time dilated dome, or do you think that was like that was something Grandmother Rin used her power for at the end there because she knew she was like dying and was like extending her last moments to be able to like talk to them as long as possible.
I think it's more of the latter, and not even so much Grandmother Rin, although I think that could be the case. Um, but the transitioning of power to Ame,
Mm,
which was a deliberate thing. It wasn't like it was a ritual thing. Like she
mm,
tells Tuvi, witness this. Like you are the witness of this happening. It's not just, hey, watch this.
yeah,
It's witness this. And then she bestows the title of, witch of the heart of the world or whatever onto Ame. And so I wonder if this is like the arcane swirling something happening. Um, I'm not sure, but definitely I like, though I like the theory of Ame not aging. It doesn't really feel like a permanent bubble.
hmm,
Um, Without they would obviously know about it. I mean, Ame would be like, oh, that's just
yeah,
so. Which that was the other thing I wanted to table for a second was this whole heart of the world thing
yeah,
seems like a big deal, but
yeah,
doesn't seem to be what is related to this curse.
right,
So I'm wondering, and the fact that the witches seem to be extinct isn't the right word. I mean, Grandmother Rin says maybe there's more out there, but as far as she knows it, like the last witch.
yeah.
Uh, so
She's the last one, at least, to guard the heart of the world. Which, yeah, the thing that it made me think of was the Fanes in the Feywild because they talked about
yes,
like guarding the heart
yeah,
of the Fey from Critical Role. So I wonder if
right.
this is like a similar concept, um, or like if there is something like literal here. Not that there's like a beating heart, but like is there more
Yeah,
to it than like you know just the idea of like power?
it's a beating heart. It's what's that
The
story?
Telltale
Where-
Heart.
Yeah. It's under the floorboards.
So, yeah, I don't really know what to make of it, but I guess that's just like, is it something that witches do? Like solely witches, I mean, solely the purview of witches to guard hearts of worlds, or could there be a
Mhm,
wizard that out there has, I guess he wouldn't have the heart of the world unless there's more than one, but maybe has like another
mhm.
thane of power, if we could call it that.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
So ending the episode on this figure, I'm wondering how combat, if we're gonna have combat, I don't know, but just how
Yes.
combat's gonna happen.
I'm so glad you said that, because I wondered the same thing, because it does feel like in these first two episodes, I mean, it's obviously D&D, but it's a bit
Yeah.
more polished for the sake of the audio
Right.
book format, which, so they could just still have normal D&D combat, but then we just get like a truncated version or something.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, and I mean, I obviously would be fine if it was normal combat. Um, but that doesn't really seem like it would mesh well with the experience we've been given so far, and we're an episode in, so maybe that's
He
not a
rolled They rolled initiative for
true,
Ursulon.
true.
So I could see it happening. I wonder if that will be like an artifact on the board that we don't see. Otherwise, it's Battlefield of the Mind, which is plenty of home D&D groups do that. But since they're professionals, I just wonder like what their version will be of that. So
Yeah, I could see it being quote unquote normal, but like all the negative space edited out.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
like all
right.
of the I don't, what's my spell? Like what am I doing this turn? And we still maybe would get some of that because that's fun.
The
But
the Ashley Johnson. What? Who are we fighting?
exactly.
So,
Uh,
what's my class? Okay, okay. Well, I'm
oh,
really. Oh, sorry.
so
Go
no,
ahead.
no, go ahead. There's another thing that I just
Okay.
fleeted off my mind, but go
Well,
ahead.
I think I'm out. I mean, I think that's everything I had. So
Yeah,
I
let
guess we
me.
have another week. I think for the next
No,
episode.
I think it's in a couple days.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
so great.
yeah,
I love that. I'm glad we got this out then.
yeah, baby. Let me
So much
give
to talk
one.
about, though. I feel like I've lost details of things I wanted to ask you about.
I know this same. Um,
We don't have, for you guys listening, we don't have something like crit roll stats like we do for Critical Role where you can reference to remember things. So I've listened to the back half of this episode twice, but I know there's other details that I wanted to ask you about, Will, that I've forgotten.
yeah, I because of the yeah. So honestly, if you've made it this deep in the video, especially, I know you're our people. But let us know down in the comments if you're watching Worlds Beyond Number, if you'd like us. I mean, our plan is to keep doing this just like we do for Critical Role, but especially so if there's people that want this stuff. But yeah, since there is no convenient crit roll stats and stuff like that, maybe you guys can help us out remembering details if we've forgot them or didn't mention them, and maybe we could speak on those next episode.
Yeah. And also, just if you're new to our channel, we'd love encouraging people just to get involved in the comments of like your own favorite theories and thoughts and just takes on things. We've welcomed people in the past who we say we think it's this, and someone says actually it's not that, it's this. We don't have any issue with that. Like we kind of just see this as a bunch of us like sitting around, just talking like, oh, what if it's this? And like people throwing out ideas. So
Yeah,
definitely feel free to jump into the comments and let us know your take on some of these things. Um,
for
but yeah,
sure. And also, we've got a Discord that'll be linked in the description as well. I don't. This is just kind of forming in my head right now because I don't know how it would work. But like for Critical Role, those episodes air and they're live, and so like when that happens, we all chat along during the live episodes. It could maybe, if we figured out a fun plan, be fun to like all like, hey, let's all listen to the new episode at this time, and maybe we could like live chat during those. Like that'll be an idea we workshop. But long and the short of it is, if you're a Discord person, definitely head on over to the Discord. Got a Worlds Beyond Number channel there for further discussion or more
yeah,
in-depth discussions beyond just the YouTube comments, if that interests you.
yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's it from me. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, we've already gone deep here, so I'm sure I'll think of 8 things tomorrow, but
Yeah.
we can
Well,
wrap it up
well,
here.
yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for checking us out. We are on Twitter. We're on YouTube, obviously. We're on everywhere you listen to podcasts. So, and don't forget our 5,000 sub giveaway. Make sure you comment on that video to be entered in for the Tal'Dorei Reborn. And yeah, anything else you can think of?
No, I don't think so.
Should
I'm on
we?
TikTok as well. If you guys are on
Okay.
TikTok,
Yeah.
and Instagram. But yeah, no, that's all I got.
Should we continue our thumbnail tradition with Worlds Beyond
I
Number?
think we should like still do something in case, so we have like a fun
Yeah.
thing to like do. But I think I
Yeah.
was gonna maybe try a little bit of a different
Oh,
thing
yeah.
here.
Yeah.
But we should still do something just so we have the option. You have
Okay.
any ideas?
No.
What if maybe like 2 thumbs up, or
Yeah.
I would do
Okay.
this, but I don't know if this like registers as 10 out of 10 or not. It's just like, why is
Yeah.
that guy
Yeah.
holding up his hands?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. 2 thumbs up. I like that. All right.
Beautiful.
Someone's gonna be scrolling. Who are these two
Who are
douchebags?
these losers?
Too excited. All right. Well, that's it, guys. Catch you later.
Bye, y'all.
Enjoy the next episode.